Monday as I talk to these warriors. In their chain of command is Secretary of Defense Mark Esper. He joins me now. Mr. Secretary, it is great to have you on for the first time on the Hugh Hewitt Show. Welcome and a happy Memorial Day weekend to you, and thank you for your service in uniform when you were a West Point graduate and today.
Well, thank you very much, Hugh. It's great to be on your show, and I appreciate you hosting me this morning on this very important and somber weekend.
Let me begin with what Senator Rick Scott just told me. I asked him, are we in Cold War 2.0? And the senator responded, absolutely, concerning China. There's no question about it. Do you agree, Secretary Esper, that Cold War 2.0 with China has begun?
There's certainly been a change in this country over the last few months after we've seen what China has done with regard to the coronavirus. I think it's the latest example of China once again not living up to its international obligations, saying one thing and doing another. You can go back through the litany of history of relationships between the United States and China for 40-plus years. And look, we see it today in Hong Kong. China once again reneging on the commitments it made to Hong Kong in 1997 during the handover. And this is just a trend that continues. And you may know that we have a national defense strategy that says we are now in an era of great power competition, and one of our biggest competitor is China. So my challenge is to implement that strategy and pivot toward China and make sure we deal with it and that we avoid a hot war with China. But at the same time, we stand up for our values, we stand up for the international rules-based order, and we stand up for those things that Americans hold dear.
Secretary Esper, I've been a big fan of your great power competition articulation. In China's state-run paper, the Global Times, this Wednesday, they cited experts as saying the Dongsha Islands, which are not really the Dongsha Islands, that's misnamed, but that's what they call them, are, quote, in a strategically important location, and that the People's Liberation Army has the capability of turning any exercise into action if Taiwan secessionists insist on secession. Many people think in August they may attempt a landing on these islands, the Pratas Islands. Would that be an act of war?
Look, we watch China very carefully. They should be cautious about what they do. We regard any type of military action like that very gravely. And I am confident that America will stand up for its allies and partners and, again, defend the international rules-based order. We got the greatest military in the world and certainly the greatest Navy history has known, and we will defend our allies and partners.
The Taiwan freely ruled island is our ally. Secretary of State Pompeo, first interview I did with him years ago, Secretary of State, said bluntly, we will live up to our treaty commitments to Taiwan. Do you agree with him, Secretary Esper?
Well, we will certainly live up to our commitments to Taiwan. We are also bound by the Taiwan Relations Act, which bound us through an act of Congress. So we will live up to the commitments we've made, both in written agreement and publicly. We've been very clear on that since our relationship with China began.
So I want to drill down on these exercises in August. If they're on Hainan Island, we have nothing to complain about. But if they come near the Pratas Islands, that violates Taiwan's sovereignty over those islands, does it not?
Well, I have to reacquaint myself with all the details of the geography and all that, and I'm not going to, get into hypotheticals. Let me, again, just say that we are going to defend our allies, our partners. We're going to defend our interests. We're going to defend the international rule. For months, we've seen Chinese maritime activity pick up a little bit more. They sunk a vessel in the South China Sea. They continue to intimidate their neighbors, whether it's fishing rights or oil drilling rights in the South China Sea. This is, again, you see increased aggressive behavior by China. You see it in the military realm, the political realm, the diplomatic realm, and certainly the disinformation as well. And it's coming back. It's a backlash. There's a backlash against them now. And we need to take every opportunity we can to reassert what our values are and to reassure our partners and allies throughout the region and indeed throughout the world.
Now, the Defense News ran an op-ed about you this week by Bonnie Christian, which is titled, Esper's Dark Vision for U.S.-China Conflict Makes War More Likely. I think that's absurd. I think you have a realist vision of China, like Mike Pompeo, like President Trump. You don't have to be belligerent about it, but you've got a very realistic view about this. Are they engaged in an informational operation against the American people that is vast, comprehensive, and I'm afraid effective?
Well, first of all, of course I agree. I think I have a very, very realistic view of China as well. I've since I left joined the military out of the academy in 1986, I've been training for war, and you know that the more capable you are in war, the more likely you are to deter one. And that's what we're trying to do, is deter war with China. I was a military planner in the Pentagon while in uniform in 1995 and 1996. So I've seen this relationship with China evolve over time, and I think the stronger and more capable we are, the more likely we are to preserve the peace and to keep the relationship, or get the relationship back on the right track. That's the important thing we need to do. And the way we do that, by the way, is by modernizing our military, by making sure we have highly qualified people, and we do. We're blessed to have the best and brightest our nation has to offer, and to develop advanced warfighting doctrines. All those things we are doing presently to make sure we can continue to deter, and if necessary, fight and win against China.
The new Secretary of the Navy was confirmed yesterday, thank goodness. I have been complaining, I'll put diplomatically, about the fact we don't have a plan for the 355-ship Navy that President Trump has promised repeatedly during the campaign and for 3 years. When will OSD let us see the plan, a real, actual nuts and bolts, this ship at this yard at this time to get us to 355, Secretary Esper?
Sure, we're working on that plan right now. I've been working closely between my internal think tank, if you will. The Navy obviously is working closely on this. We've brought in some outside experts. I want to make sure we have a future naval force that can meet the needs of deterring China, and again, failing that, fighting and winning. I think 355 ships is too few. I actually think we need a bigger Navy than that. I think its composition will look more different. It will be more and smaller type of surface combatants. And if you saw recently, Hugh, we just announced the purchase of a new surface combatant. I think we probably need more in terms of submarines. We need to move much more quickly on unmanned or lightly manned ships, and we certainly need strategic deterrence. So, look, we have the best Navy in the world, and we're going to make it better. And I want to make sure we get that structure right, that future force idea. But it's got to have things like distributed lethality. It has to be survivable against a near-peer power such as China or Russia. And so it has to have certain attributes. So we need to be looking toward the future and make sure we build the fleet that we need going forward.
Mr. Secretary, what date will we see the plan by?
I'm currently right now they're looking to back brief me, the team internally, in July or August, and then I want to make sure I share it with the Hill and do those types of things. But look, we have a plan right now. It's called our 5-year defense plan. So what we have planned is what's going to continue. The shipbuilding plan is a 30-year plan. It's beyond 5 years. It's of uncertain value. But what I do hope to portray is the objective force that we need by 2045 to deal with the Chinese. And by the way, it's not just surface combatants, but we need to start integrating into that plan things like sea lift and other enablers that are crucial to the maritime fight.
I just think it's going to be an issue in the campaign that President Trump promised 355, and we haven't got a plan. But let me move on in our short time left.
Well, again, I think 355 is too few. I think we need more than 355.
I'll take that with a plan, Mr. Secretary. But let me go to the Iranian threat.
I'll share it with you early on.
The Iranians keep running speedboats at our ships, and there is an article this week that they are trying to tempt us into shooting them. If the U.S. Navy sinks an Iranian gunboat, speedboat, will you stand behind the commander of that ship defending his sailors?
Look, we've been very clear. I've had this discussion with the commander. I've had this discussion with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. We know what the guidance is, the rules of engagement. We've updated it in the last few weeks since that provocative behavior by the Iranians. My forces know that if they feel threatened, they always have the right of self-defense, and I will certainly stand behind our men and women in uniform if they take that action.
Last question. Will it only be tit for tat, but if the Iranians actually engage us, threaten our sailors, will we be satisfied with sinking one ship, or will there be retaliation beyond that? Because we didn't do anything after they dropped the ICBMs on al-Assad. We just said, okay, time out. This time, will we say time out again?
Well, it's not. I don't look at things as a tit for tat. The question is, what do you need to do to send the right message and to restore deterrence? And I will tell you that with regard to the actions in December, January, we certainly restored deterrence.
Yes, you did.
A major player off the battlefield, a terrorist leader of a terrorist organization who is quite capable, and we've set them back considerably. And I always thought that was the right thing to do.
Secretary Esper, I appreciate your time. I hope you'll come back soon. I love the candor, and I love the clarity regarding the People's Republic of China.
Absolutely. Thank you, Hugh.
Thank you, Secretary.